I really like plushie toys, but I've never tried to customize one, so I finally decided to give that a try. I've seen a lot of these clay face bears over the years, specifically on Pinterest, which I use a lot to gather ideas for fashion and cosplay. I thought they were really cute and really creepy at the same time, which really matches my aesthetic, so I finally decided to make one. In terms of the base bear, I didn't want to use one that I was too emotionally attached to, so I got a bear from a charity shop instead. This one was £2, and I really liked the bow tie that he was wearing, but other than that, he's a very plain and ordinary bear that I felt was a good candidate for this sort of project. So obviously the first step of this project was to take off his face, and even though I picked a bear that I wasn't very emotionally attached to, I did still feel quite guilty doing this. I am one of those people who can't help but feel like objects have souls, and because of that, this made me feel so guilty. The only reason I went through with it is that I knew that I was going to give him a new face, so I wasn't actually destroying him, I was just giving him a face transplant of sorts. I don't think that makes it sound much better, but I was really hoping that the bear would like his new face and it would suit him a lot better. With the face removed, I then sewed a circle of fabric over the hole just to hold it all in place and to keep the stuffing from falling out. I also took this opportunity to round his head out a little bit because on one side he was a little bit squished, it looked like he'd been in a box for a while. So I just rounded out that side to make his face a perfect circle again. Next, I tried to remove the brand name from the bottom of his foot with a seam ripper, but it really wasn't working. It's been done by machine, so it's just incredibly difficult to take out. And even if I could have got it out, I believe the fur would have been quite warped into that shape anyway. So I decided just to leave it and think about a way of covering it up later on. With that all said, I had the base bear completed and I could move on to designing his new face. So I wanted to go for a traditional clown look based on the colours of the bear. So I decided to give him a white face paint kind of face with a scalloped outline and hearts around the eyes. When I made the actual face, I didn't stick exactly to my design, but I really like having a visual that I can refer to if I'm ever stuck on anything. With the design all decided on, I moved on to cutting all the pieces I would need out of cardboard. I decided to use cardboard instead of clay simply because I like recycling and upcycling things that I'm not using rather than going out and buying new supplies for every single project. Card is also easier for me to work with because I've used it many times in the past, whereas I don't think I've used clay since I was in secondary school, so it would have been a more difficult process. With the card pieces, I wanted to layer everything in the same way the references did. So the frills are one layer, then the base face is the second layer, the eyebrows, eyes and muzzle are the third layer, and then finally the nose is the fourth layer. I think it might have been worth using a thicker cardboard or maybe more layers to give it a bit more dimension. I still like how the flat look came out, but I do think it would look more like a bear if everything was a little bit thicker, so maybe if I do this again in the future I will focus on that. Now that I had all my pieces, I simply glued them all together to make the face. For this I use Mod Podge. I find that it binds things quicker and easier than glues like PVA, so I tend to use it for all gluing purposes. Once everything was glued down, I then did a top coat over the entire face to be certain nothing was going to fall off or move around during the drying process. Once it was glued together, I left it to dry for an entire day to be certain that the paint wouldn't move any of the pieces. And while it was drying, I moved on to making the pieces to cover up the feet. As I mentioned earlier, the bear has a logo on one of its feet, so I decided to add little hearts to the bottom of the feet to cover this. I went with hearts because they match the eye makeup I was planning to give him, but I'm also a big fan of Care Bears who are mostly drawn with hearts on the bottom of their feet, so I thought it would be cute to make my bear kind of an honorary Care Bear. As expected for this project, the most time-consuming part was all the painting. Firstly, I layered 4 coats of white paint in thin layers to get the smoothest finish that I could possibly manage, while still filling in the cardboard holes along the edges and covering up all the brown. For the first layer, I go in with a really cheap paint from Tiger, because the first layer of paint on cardboard always sinks into it quite a lot, so I don't like using my expensive paint for the base coat. Once that first layer was down, I went over it with a higher quality paint for another 3 layers. You could definitely use a cheaper paint to get this amount of white on a piece like this, but it would take probably around 10 to 15 layers, and I just don't have the patience to wait for every single layer to dry.
Join me. Yay!
Next, I moved on to the detail painting, which took a really long time, but I had a lot of fun doing it. It's been a while since I last painted something. It's not really a hobby I pick up very often because I don't have a lot of inspiration or ideas of what I can or want to be able to paint, mainly because I usually get stuck on the blank canvas phase for a really long time. But with this, it wasn't a blank canvas at all by the time I got really stuck into this painting portion, and that made it significantly easier to get stuck in. Obviously, this was a very easy design to paint. There isn't a lot of detail. I'm only using 3 colours, and it's a shape that I draw a lot because I often draw hearts on my face with eyeliner. But it being easy made it a rather relaxing process that I could really sit down and focus on for a few minutes every couple of hours. Having those long gaps also allowed me to pick up other projects in between, which to me makes a project so much easier to finish. If I work on one particular project for too long one day, I tend to get annoyed at it regardless of how well it's going. I think it's because my body gets tired before my brain does, so I always push things a little bit too far, and suddenly I feel really exhausted, and when that happens, I just get annoyed. But it's also a case that if I don't do anything, I also get annoyed, so I just can't win either way. While painting the eyes, I realised the design I've done really looks like a panda. It's mostly because of the hearts around the eyes, but it's also the fact that the base is white and I made the nose wider with a very obvious nose in the same colour as the eyes. It almost made me want to try and dye parts of the bear darker, maybe using that almost black-blue colour of his bow tie to make him look more like a panda, but I got too nervous to try it in case I ruined the bear right before gifting him his new face. So I do think I'm going to get a new bear and try dyeing it before making the face so I can make a face that matches the new dye I've done. That way there is no way that the dye could ruin the project and would actually act as a way to improve it. After leaving the face to dry for an entire day so I knew for certain that the paint wasn't going to come off on the bear, I then glued it onto the face. For this I used super glue because I knew there would be a risk of the face slipping while it dried if I used a slower drying glue. In general, I wouldn't recommend using super glue on fabric because it soaks in a lot more, meaning you have to use more glue than you normally would, and it leaves horrible stains all over the fabric, and it also ruins the fabric's flexibility. But for projects like this, I don't need the fabric to move, nor do I need a perfect application of the glue because the face is going to completely cover it, so it works well for projects like this. With that all said, the bear is actually done and I can finally show you the final result. I think this bear came out so cute, and I really wish I'd done this earlier. I just really like how much he matches my aesthetic. Obviously currently he really matches because I did this makeup to specifically match him, but in general this is kind of how I like to do my makeup, so I really like that I get to display him in my room and kind of show off how I do my makeup style while not wearing makeup. Like I said earlier, I do want to try this again but making it a little bit more complicated. So I want to dye the bear, I want to make the face thicker, I maybe want to do something a little bit different for the feet because they are quite wide, so it kind of doesn't really go with how I did the face. Like the face doesn't come past the fur, but the feet it sticks out, so it looks a little bit disjointed, but obviously I only did that to cover up the logo that was on this foot, so I'm not too mad at it. He's also been named Zachary Bear by my boyfriend, which I think kind of suits him. I don't really know where he got that name from, he just thought of a random name, but I do think it's cute, so this is Zachary Bear. But with that said, that is it for this video. If you did enjoy it, please give it a like down below, comment what else you'd like me to do, and subscribe as I post a new video every single week, and I'd love to see you again. But until then, bye!